Hi, everyone. I hope you're doing well. Thank you so much for tuning back into another episode of How Did You Learn to Do That? Can you believe this is our 6-month anniversary? This is our 26th episode. I can't believe we're here. I can't believe we've been doing this for 26 weeks. It's been an absolute honor and a pleasure, and I've had so much fun. And I really, truly feel that I'm living my purpose in life. And I've just loved every single minute of this. And I'm so excited to have you join me today to hear the story of Clio, who many of you know and many of you actually know about through her brands. She kind of, once you realize, once you start looking for her brands, you realize that it is really everywhere. Both her brand with Booje Media, Do Edit, the headbands and hair accessories line that she has with Caitlin Bristow, as well as Spade and Sparrows wine label with Caitlin Bristow as well. So I'm so excited to have her join me today. And I'm so excited for you guys to hear her story. She's a 5-time entrepreneur, and I want to just have her story inspire you that you can really create anything that you want. You could do anything that you want in life, and you could do it again and again and have the same results as long as your heart is in it, as long as you're taking the action, believing in yourself, and committing to yourself and achieving your dreams. So stay tuned. I'm excited for her to join. But just before she does, I would like if you could subscribe to us on YouTube, like us on all our social media accounts, and follow us on our podcast platforms. And if you've loved everything that we've shared so far, I would absolutely be honored if you could leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, as well as if there's someone that you know you want to nominate, send me their name, nominate them by going to our website, howdidyoullearntodothat.com, and fill out our nomination form. I would love to have them on the podcast. So stay tuned. Clio will be joining us in just a minute. Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to welcome Clio onto the How Did You Learn to Do That podcast. So Clio is a 5-time entrepreneur in marketing, talent management, fashion, lifestyle, media production, and technology sectors. Her current companies include digital marketing agency, Booje Media. Is that right? Booje Media?
It's Booje Media, but I like Booje too.
Okay, Booje. Okay. Booje Media, hair accessory brand Do Edit, wine label Spade and Sparrows, and podcast agency Podcast Nation. So I'm so excited to have you on the podcast today to talk about your journey, how you're able to manage 5 companies at the same time, and everything else that you do. So I'm so excited, and thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited that we get to have like an hour break and we just get to chit chat.
Yeah, I think it's been pretty exciting. I've been following you for a little while, and I'm just so inspired by you. I'm inspired by everything that you do, and now that I know you, and like I know of you, and I know your brands and all that, and everywhere I look now, I see you. I see your brand, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't notice that you were so well impacted across. You impact so much across the city, and we're both from the Lower Mainland, and so seeing that is so inspirational, especially as someone that's just starting in the entrepreneurial world and as a woman as well. And I'm so excited for you to hear your story. So what really set you on this journey? What made you want to get into marketing and into business and to begin to do all the work that you do?
Yeah, so I think like graduating high school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and I think that a lot of people, I think that's very common. But when you're in that moment, you do feel overwhelmed, and you feel like you're already going to have everything figured out. So what I did and what worked really well is I ended up going when I went to college and just took a whole bunch of different courses in a lot of different sectors. And I just completely connected with it was an advertising class at the time. And I was just, my interest and excitement for going to that class was very different than the other courses. Yeah. So I've always really liked to follow my gut, my instinct. And I think I've always known that I'm driven by some people can be driven by like, okay, I really want to figure this out, and they're more analytical, or potentially like money is a motivator. But for me, it was really about doing something that I'm passionate about. Mm-hmm. So I was very, very lucky. I had parents that supported me, and they always really encouraged that too. They're like, got to make sure that you do something that you love. So I ended up pursuing, and I went the marketing route. I took a communications course, and then From there, after I graduated, I had the opportunity to do an internship at a really big advertising agency, and got to see that world. But I kind of decided to. Um, I must have had that entrepreneurial bug very early on, because I decided to go off on my own. I started a social media company at that time. Social media was just the beginning, and I figured, I was like, maybe I'm able to start something on my own at this point, because there are no experts in this space, and it's something that I can really dive into, learn, just like anyone else who would be offering these services have to do. And I just started that way. So it was really organic. I really enjoyed doing it. I was still serving at the time. So at nights I was serving, and then during the day I was approaching companies and letting them know that social media could be a good tool, to connect with people, so that they could learn more about their company.
Yeah.
It was more so a way to be like, you got to really follow where your audience, or where people, or where eyeballs are following. And at this time, it's on computers, on social media, on their mobile devices. Um, so it was a challenge at first to get businesses to understand how social media would help,
Yeah.
their bottom line, or their revenue. But then I quickly saw a shift in terms of, it wasn't about meeting them to teach them what social media was. It was all of a sudden like everyone felt a little bit behind, and like, okay, I really need to get on board. So I do think that with timing is a big thing, when you start a business. And I feel like
Mhm.
I've experienced that on both ends, where you're a bit too early, right on time, or maybe a bit too late. And I
Yeah.
feel like with Booje Media and getting in the social media space, like it was just the right time. And
Mhm.
that's how it all evolved from there. And it was all like really organic. But I do think that I saw my entrepreneurial spirit keep coming back out in other things. And so I feel like one thing is never just like was enough for me. Like I think it's also the curiosity and appetite to keep learning and growing.
Mhm.
And so I started different ventures, and from all of them, I took something different. Some successful, some not, but I almost feel like I learned the most from the one that didn't work out. And so I think, yeah, it's like the risk taker in me, but also seeing that if it doesn't work out, then, it's like, what can you take from that, and how can you apply that into your other businesses or future opportunities?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's amazing, and I love that you say that entrepreneurial bug just kept pulling at you, because that's exactly how I always felt, I feel that, and I also love that you said you wanted to pursue your passion, because I'm a huge believer that, it would be really sad for you to work 40 hours a week at a job that just doesn't excite you, that doesn't bring you joy, because that's a huge chunk of your life and a huge chunk of your week. And I'm a huge proponent of following your passion and doing what you love. And yeah, and I love that you said that. And even with entrepreneurial bug, it's all about listening about your gut, and like listening to yourself, and listening to what truly brings you happiness, and even carving out that time in your day to figure out what your body is trying to tell you, what your mind is trying to tell you, I think is amazing. And so, how do you, with all the ventures that you have now, how do you manage to? I know they're all like your little babies. So, how do you manage to have time to do it all?
Mhm. Yes, I know that's the question a lot of people ask. Like, how are you managing different businesses? Because there is two components to it. Like a lot of people really believe that you can just like really hone into one, and you need to put all your energy for that to be successful. But I think that for me, what has worked, and I can definitely see the upside in that. Sometimes like, oh, I wish I just had one project that I could like
Yeah,
fully focus on. But I think what works here is that they all really play off of each other, and
yeah,
they're all very intertwined. And I think that that as long as like you can have that big picture and that vision, and I really like to think about like I always like to see what's coming ahead. So like looking forward, um,
yeah,
and then just having really good people in every business that you can really trust, and that you don't feel like you have to micromanage, and building those strong teams, I think, is what makes this possible, and in order for them to be successful and keep moving forward. So I'm just really lucky that I have
yeah.
great teams. And again, it's just nice that they do play off of each other, because if one grows, it usually impacts the other business. And um, where I think it'd be different if they were in all very completely different realms.
Yeah.
So so yeah, I would say feel lucky to definitely have good people around me.
Yeah, I think yeah, that's amazing. That's a really good thing that you have in your businesses, because I think that what you said about not being able to micromanage and being able to trust, I think is the biggest piece, because with managing 5 businesses, are you able to have time carved out for you, just for you to check in with yourself to make sure you're aligned with that overall big picture? And sometimes I call that, your why or your mission, but your individual mission, your individual why for you. Are you able to carve out that time to connect and align with yourself? And I think that and what you said about having people you can trust, I think that that is probably one of the answers you'll say, is that being able to have people in place so that you can have that time to connect with yourself and know you're on that purpose and you're still aligned with what you wanted to do, I think is great. So
Yeah.
how do you find that time to align with Clio, and align with yourself, and go back to that place when you were in university and you had that passion going into your advertising classes? How do you connect with yourself, and do you try to make that time regularly?
Yeah, it's interesting because I actually feel that I have the most time for myself now than I ever have. And I think it goes back to having great people and a great team. Like when you're first starting out, everything falls on you, every single aspect of the business, even from like accounting and bookkeeping to doing the work to trying to see the vision and come up with the strategy. And I do remember those, like, those first 5 years, I was working nonstop. But I also think it was a great time in my life because it was in my 20s. So I feel like I had more energy. But now it's more about really putting those systems in place with these strong people that can really, again, like if you have people that you trust and you're empowering them, it's like as long as everyone knows what the goal is and everyone is going towards the same direction. And I think a huge piece of it is good communication. That's something that we've been working on the businesses, is like everyone communicating with each other and knowing who needs to know what, because that's where I think anxiety comes from, is when you don't know whether something has been dropped or not, or you find something out
Yeah.
later and then you feel like you have to then react instead of being proactive. So I feel like that has been really helpful to just give me more time to find a better balance in my life. And to me, balance is important. And as I get older, I really understand how being able to refuel, whatever that means to you, actually contributes to the success that you have in your, like, day to day in your work. And
Yeah.
so I feel really at a good place where I'm at there. I definitely think COVID has helped. I feel like for in terms of finding that balance, like for me, I feel like I needed to reset more in terms of like slowing down, focusing on just like my health and what's important to me. And I think too, naturally, your body tells you what you need. So an interesting piece is like some people feel like they love to exercise, or they to them like their morning shower is so important to them, and
Yeah.
it's almost like that time where you are on your own, or that you can really reflect on your thoughts, or that's like your recharge time. Because for me, like I'm definitely extroverted, so I do refuel with like people's energy. But
Yeah.
having said that, now I do feel like I need that time for myself. So figuring out ways, like I love doing yoga, and now I'm like, oh, it's probably my body telling me that I need to stretch, like I need to like slow my mind down.
Yeah.
And so it's like now I understand, or now I can, yeah, understand myself better, and I'm listening to my body better and knowing that there's a reason for it, because your body will tell you when you need that. I don't know. Do you
Yeah.
find that you're a little bit more in tune with what you need now? Like I feel like every year you get to know yourself better and better.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree with you. COVID is it's a tragedy for everything it's done and all the lives it's taken. But I think in the same way, like you said, it's really forced everyone to slow down. And I feel like that's where connecting with yourself, and I completely agree with you. Year after year, like as you get older, I feel that I have connected with myself more. And now I have these morning routines and these evening routines that are non-negotiables for me, because if, when I don't do them, I notice how, how much it affects my day, how much it affects everything. And for me, and having a young daughter who's almost 2, for me, it's really important that I show up as the best version of myself to her, and I'm not short tempered, and I'm not tired, I'm not overwhelmed. Um, so I can have that time and energy with her, and having those routines and having those non-negotiables and recharging, I think is so
Yeah.
important.
Well,
And I go ahead.
oh no, I was just gonna say, I feel like it's so important actually what you said, and one thing that I've been trying to work on so much more, because I do find that my mind goes all over the place, is being present. So like you're saying, that being when you're with your daughter, you're being present, you're not thinking about other things. And I feel like that's so important in like all aspects of your life, and just trying to be present in that moment and listening. And whether it's to someone or internally, I do think that there's
Yeah.
so much value to that.
Yeah, and just to go back to something you said at the beginning, where you said that you feel like now you have more time for yourself. Now you have the systems in place and the people in place for you to take more time for yourself and take care of yourself and your health. And I think I think that you're on the other side of where I want to be with the time freedom. And I always say to everybody that time is the only thing that you can never get back in
No.
life. And so working hard, over, you said 5 years. So working hard for those 5 years has now allowed you to live in a way that a lot of people won't live in that way that you live now. But also on that same token, nobody would have worked as hard as you did for those 5 years because of pure willpower or commitment to themselves and their dreams and their goals. And I feel like that's amazing because working those years like that has now given you that freedom and that time to spend on yourself and recharge with people around you in your community. And I think that's amazing. And I think that what I've done in starting this work and realizing, it's so easy to get yourself, I don't know if you found it this way, but for me, I find it difficult to delegate or to give away tasks. I feel like I need to do it all. But for me, I go back to that why, and that overall goal for me, and that was creating that time freedom for me to spend time with myself and with my family and my friends. And um and then having that, going back to that, I realized that these are the things I need to have in place in order to get that. And so I think it's amazing that you said that now you have more time for yourself, more now than you did when you first started, of course. But just creating that space for yourself to do what makes you truly happy, I think it's incredible and it's very inspirational.
And I think too, and it does go back to like that. Well, thank you. But it also goes back to that trust in who you're working with. But another point about it, because I know it is hard for people to delegate, and like it just doesn't come natural to everyone. It just depends on your personality type. But I think one thing that I also tell myself is like, what's the worst thing that can happen? And I think I'm lucky that I'm in an industry that really, if someone does end up doing something the way that I wouldn't do it myself, or that is a mistake, you know, it's not the end of the world. And I also believe that we grow a lot from the mistakes. Like the things that didn't
Yeah.
work out for me are the ones that I've learned the most from. So if that means that we can work together on rectifying the issue, and we've learned on like how to do it for the next time or moving forward, or you gain that experience and knowledge, then that is good too. So it's also about how you deal with the mistake. So
Yeah.
I feel like maybe that helps people be able to delegate a little bit more and not feel like if there something goes wrong, it's the end of the world.
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree, and that actually reminded me of the next question that I wanted to ask you is how do you maintain your positive mindset, or how do you maintain? And sometimes we can't always be positive. That's just the fact of life. But when things get challenging and when things get overwhelming, and there's more of those mistakes than there isn't, how are you able to just reconnect with yourself? And realign your mindset to then go back to that place and start adjusting those or making those changes. And like you said, we learn the most from those mistakes. But when there's challenges in that moment, how do you go back to that mindset where you think like that, where you're like, I'm just going to learn from this, so let's roll with it.
Yeah, I'm a very big believer that you can shift and control your mindset, because I think that at the end of the day is how you react to things, how you deal to things, how you can change your perception,
Right.
and which again allows you to deal with it in a different way. So
Yeah.
I do try to think, like, if I notice myself just getting in terms of like that negative space or getting frustrated or overwhelmed, I think I go back to, okay, like, let's shift your mindset. This is, how are you going to deal with it in the best way possible? And what are you going to learn from it? Or just telling myself, this is just part of my growth. I'm going to, learn a new skill set, or I'm confronting something that is uncomfortable, but that's how you grow. So I tell myself, like, that's what I keep telling myself. And I
Yeah.
really, really try to stay in like a calm mindset where I feel like I can still have the power. But definitely, like, you do end up getting in those times where it is overwhelming, or you do feel like you're getting like on your nerves easier. So I think it's
Yeah.
just catching yourself is number one, and number two is like resetting your mind.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that that's awesome. I think that having that why statement, or having that, and it seems to me that you're very strong in your purpose and where you're going and your goals, and having that be very clear to you, I think does, like you said, help you get back to that place where you're learning from it and you're assessing the situation and realigning with yourself. And I think that, sorry?
Oh, I was just saying, like, I just personally really don't like being in a negative frame of mind. Like, I really
Yeah.
don't like it. Like, when I am, it throws me off, and I'm not going to be productive.
Yeah.
So some people, they don't mind it, or even they don't recognize it. But for me,
Yeah.
it's really important to snap out of it, because if not, it's just like, it just does not feel right to me.
Yeah. I think, yeah, you're right. A lot of people don't recognize it, and a lot of people, they just think that they're tired because they're working too much, or they're getting more anxious, or they're getting more irritable because of the work. And there's all these reasons, but I think it's taking some time to actually reflect upon why you feel that way and how can you snap out of it. And I think, like you said earlier, you said, as you get older, you start to connect with yourself more.
Yeah.
I think that's it. I think that is the biggest thing, is that you start recognizing those little signs. And I was talking to someone yesterday that said that she, if her husband asks her if she's okay more than once, then she knows something is wrong, and she has to go and reflect upon it
Just
and
snap out of
say,
it.
yeah, and just reflect upon it and say, okay, if he's asked me twice, then no, I'm not fine, and let's figure out what's going on and what's happening. And
Oh, yeah. Sometimes you don't even know. Like,
yeah,
you're like, whoa, wait, am I okay? Or, so it's not always as intuitive for everyone. So I
yeah,
think
and
the
I
important thing too is getting sleep. That's another big
yeah,
one for entrepreneurs, because I think sleep is so important. I feel like for you, I don't know how you do it when you have a child, because I have so many friends now that have kids, and I understand now that there's a lot of sleep deprivation. So
yeah.
good for you. Do you feel like you get your sleep?
Oh yeah, like sleep. I love sleep. And actually, when I was pregnant, my husband was worried because I don't wake up to anything over the like throughout the night, like nothing. And I have 5 or 6 alarms, and I don't wake up. And he was worried that our child was going to be crying, and I would be sound asleep. And so but it was fine. But no, to me, sleep was so so important. And as soon as she hit, before 6 months, you can't sleep train. But as soon as she hit 6 months and her like circadian clock kicked in, I sleep trained her, and I got her in her own room, and like I needed my own sleep. And she's really, really, I got really lucky because she was sleeping through the night from the beginning.
Oh, that's
But
amazing.
at 4 months she stopped, and that was really, really hard for those 2 months to not be able to sleep. And their sleep cycle is only 45 minutes. So I completely resonate with your friends, because it's tough to have no
In
sleep.
5 minutes.
And then and then it just happens over and over again. I mean, she's pretty good at sleeping, but yeah, those, when she gets sick or when she's teething or whatnot, it's horrible. It's not fun. But yeah, your sleep is so important. And earlier on, actually, my very first guest on this podcast, she was telling me how she gets up at 5 a.m. every single day to do a morning meditation. And I
Wow.
asked her, like, how do you do that? How, and she has two kids that are home. And I was like, how do you manage? And she said she goes to sleep at 8:30 to
Oh,
manage. They go to sleep really early. And
whoa.
I was like, that I'm a night owl. I do my best work late at night and I'm like, I can't get there. But last night I went to bed at 9:30 and I felt really proud of myself.
Hey, good. That's amazing. And it is like it really is different for everyone. And I think I do have so much respect for people that know what they need and they make sure that it happens. And that's the discipline of like going to bed at 8:30 and waking up at 5, if that's what
Yeah.
works. I think it's just like, but for you, it's like you're a night owl, and that just means that that's when your creative juices are flowing,
Yeah.
and also recognizing that, and it's like because we're all so different.
Yeah. It's definitely, well, I mean, I'm sure you can your friends feel the same way that have kids, but once you have a kid, I feel like you almost have to become a morning person because
Oh
you
yeah.
can't be a night owl because my daughter, she gets up now at 7 a.m. and it doesn't matter what time I went to sleep, So like you
That's so
said,
true. That's per schedule.
yeah, and like you said, like as an entrepreneur, like it's your sleep is so important because you need to have all those different hats on at the same time, and if you're lacking sleep, it's true, it's
Yes,
difficult.
for sure.
Yeah, I think what I think that is most inspiring about you and what you've shared so far is that how you're able to um, like you said, you don't like to be in a negative headspace. And I think that's amazing. And if you were to actually go back to being Cleo that was walking into that advertising class in university, what would you say to yourself at that time that you've now learned after all these years of doing this work? What would you say? What's the best advice that you would give her to let her know that, it's all going to work out and it'll be fine?
Hmm. I feel like I would tell her that um, I think I would the first thing that comes to mind is like to be patient and to just work hard. And I feel like a lot of times, especially this generation, or you hear all these stories, it's like it, it takes time to build something up, and it goes back to the experience. And I think that
Yeah.
when you're young, you come out and you're like, oh, like I have so many fresh ideas. I'm doing social media. It's like this is my realm. I'm used to the computers. Like you do um, justify you being young, because obviously that was something that I had to overcome when I would go into meetings. Clearly I was
Yeah.
quite young, but I also think that it's like, taking all of those experiences and just understand that like you do grow without realizing from all of them, and the way that you react to things like also evolves as well. And I
Yeah.
think it would just be like be patient, take your course, and just like keep working hard and keep doing what you love. But yeah, I feel like the patient piece and trying to absorb as much knowledge as possible, because a lot of times too is it goes back to the model of, if trying to take the easy route. I definitely did that. There was a course, it was a media buying, and I'm not very analytical. Like I don't like the mathematical portion of it. And I remember we had this one girl, she was so smart. She was one of her there was a group of four of us, and she was so smart, and like we gave her that portion. And like looking back at it now, and that's happened in work too, you want to do things that feel like easier to you, that you enjoy doing. But I remember being like, oh, I really wish I'd taken on that portion, because that's what I didn't understand. And coming out of it, I didn't gain anything from it. So when that came up in another scenario, I was like, oh, I really wish that I had learned that piece of it, if that makes sense. So I think that
Yeah.
sometimes it's like try to be a sponge and try to do a little bit of everything at the beginning, because then you can get a better understanding of like the industry and the landscape, and you can speak to it better whenever that comes up, because you never know what's going to come up. So I would say that. And then the other piece of it too that I've learned throughout, and it was again through experience, but I wouldn't take it back, so I don't know if I would actually tell myself this, but I feel like there's something really valuable and leaning into what you're really good at, because
Yeah.
then it feels good when you're swimming with the flow instead of upstream. So
Yeah.
when I started the tech company, we got into a lot of things that were very uncomfortable and new to me. Like we raised money, we had investors. The way that you deal with a company with investors is very different than when you're a sole entrepreneur. And so I felt like I just kept going. Like I didn't want to give up. I felt like, okay, the harder it is means the more I'm learning, the more skill sets I'm gaining. But I also
Yeah.
think that at one point I realized, I'm like, why am I trying up to swim upstream when there's something that's coming so natural and the success is coming because I'm really playing into my strengths. At the end of the day,
Yeah.
you can't be good at everything. And I think it's recognizing that can be really valuable, and also make like helps you make decisions when it comes to your business.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. Yeah, working, figuring out what you're good at or what is your passion or what just comes natural to you. I think that, and it actually surprises me every single time because I do coach university grads into getting into the professional world. And the biggest part is that they go through this 4 year degree, and then at the end, I ask like, or at the beginning, I ask them like, so why did you do that degree? Let's figure out your passion so we can figure out what industry you want to go into. And most of the time they don't know. You know, they
Mhm.
just like, I don't know,
So common.
I just fell into it and I just did it. And I said, well, then you can't find I mean, you can find a job in it, but if it's not going to give you passion, it's not going to fulfill you. And, living a fulfilling life, especially in something you want to build and do every single day,
Yeah.
I think is the biggest thing that you should strive towards. And I love that
Yeah.
you said that you try to work towards what comes naturally to you and what you love. And I actually started this podcast in April during COVID, but while I was on my mat leave, that was my one goal. I said I need to figure out what's work but doesn't feel like work.
Mhm.
And then I started doing all that dissecting and figuring it out, and I realized that doing podcasting or to share stories or to inspire people and coach people through life and situations, that was the stuff that I was doing already. And that was just coming naturally to me. So I was like, that's probably the work. And that's exactly how I feel. I don't feel like I'm working here. And I don't feel like, it's hard. I feel like, it just comes naturally and it's just easy. And so I love that you said that because that's I think the biggest tip can give to anyone. And I know you can definitely share about your experience about being an entrepreneur is not easy. It's hard. It's hard work. And so when you're doing it for something that you're uncomfortable with or you don't know a lot about or you just doesn't come naturally to you, just be an entrepreneur. I think that's the most difficult thing you
Yeah, it
could
makes it
do.
even harder for sure. You feel a little
Yeah.
bit like maybe a little lost, or you can't get like grasp of it.
Yeah, exactly. And then and then obviously when you're selling, like if, for example, if you didn't like wine and you were trying to sell your wine company, Spade and Sparrows, that wouldn't be so much fun for you, right?
No, no, I really really like that I like wine. For a second there, I thought I was allergic, and I was like, "No, I can't be allergic." It ended up being shrimp, and then I was like, "No, this would be devastating," because I love drinking Spade and Sparrows so much that I'm like,
Yeah.
it wouldn't fit.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Okay. Well, I'm good that you're not. It's a good thing you're not allergic because if had to drink it and then you couldn't, that wouldn't be fun.
Oh no, that would be devastating. I think Caitlin would disown me as a friend and manager and business partner. She's like, if I can't drink with you, then what's the point? It's got to be fun
Yeah.
too. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I completely agree. Well, I think that you've shared a lot, and I know you shared about what you would say to yourself. But for someone like me or somebody else that's just starting, their work and just starting that grind and just starting that to enter that world of entrepreneurship, what's the biggest piece of advice you would give them to getting started and to just get going?
Oh, I feel like there's so many, like in terms of like what we touched on, like make sure that you're passionate about it, because you're going to need to work really hard, but it's easier to work hard when it's something that you love doing. I also think it's like really good when you when you dive into something new, like really understanding the landscape of that industry, like, you know,
Yeah.
who's doing what, where is the, because what I find a lot of the times is that I'll give you like a podcast, for example. There's a lot of podcasters that come to us with an idea, but we're like, it's already been done so many times. Like,
Yeah.
what's your unique angle? What are you going to do that's different? And I think that today's world is really different than ever before, and people care about, you know, their values matter in terms of how they, like, their purchasing behavior or what they're going to listen to. So it's like really finding like, what's unique to you and really sticking to it. And then even though you understand who your competition is, I would say don't ever get stuck on then trying to compete with them. You know, then
Yeah.
you really focus on your business or like what you're doing and really hone in on that and try to always like stay creative and be proactive, not reactive. I think when you're in a
Yeah.
state where you always feel behind or like you're trying to catch up, whether it's trends, whether it's like your actual deadlines, I feel like then you're in a spot where it's harder to like to break through and move forward.
Mhm.
So I feel like trying to stay in a state, which can be really hard, especially when you're starting, and especially if you are like a small team, if it's just you or a small team, because there are so many different things that you have to deal with. But I think always trying to like to look ahead and see where you're moving towards, because I do think that
Yeah.
envisioning things is really powerful as well, and being clear on what's important to you and making sure that that translates into what you're doing.
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree, and I think that being clear on what you want to do, and I love that you said, be aware of what other people are doing in this space, but doesn't mean that you have to worry and get bogged down by trying to compete. And you have to be your own unique voice.
Yeah,
And I always say you're the only you that there is in the world. So you have a story, you have a voice. It's just up to you to share it and to encourage and inspire. And that's exactly what this podcast is about. That's exactly what you've done here today. I hope everyone's inspired to learn how Clio learned to do what she does. And if you have any questions for her, or if you want to follow up with her, send me a message, or I'll link her account onto the show notes for you and on my social media so you can connect with her there. But other than that, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to talk to me, to share a bit about your story, to inspire me for sure. I'm completely inspired, and I feel like I have now so much more I want to go and do. And yeah, I'm excited for everything that is coming up for you and everything that you're doing right now. And I'm excited to follow along in your journey.
oh well, thank you so much, and thank you for wanting to listen to my story. It feels very flattering, and it is really nice to just connect and reflect on the last like 10 years, and so I do, and I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for listening to that end of that episode. I hope that you're inspired by what Cleo had to share, and I hope that you feel encouraged to believe in yourself, to follow through with your passions, to figure out what your passions are in the first place, and to really commit to yourself and create that life for yourself, create that ability for you to feel happy and to feel fulfilled, and create that space for you to be able to have time to take care of yourself and your health and spend time with your family in however you feel fit and makes you feel the most fulfilled and happy. And with that, I would love if you could subscribe to us on YouTube. And if you enjoyed hearing Cleo's story, I'd be honored if you could leave us a review on Apple Podcasts to help us grow. And if you have any questions, or if you or anyone you know inspires you and you want to know how they learned to do something, or you want to share how you learned to do something, please nominate yourself or nominate someone else by heading over to our website, How Did You Learn to Do That, and completing our nomination form. All right, we'll see you next week.